the lane. 15, 10. Touchdown, Chargers.
Well, the good vibes continue. Welcome into a brand new episode of Chargers Weekly. As always, joined by Matt Money Smith, who I think has been on the road calling hoops. Crossing over, Money?
Yeah, I just got, it's been a busy week. Was out at MSG, got a sweet little garden run in me. St. John's versus UConn on Saturday, and then a quick one up to Maples, Stanford versus UCLA. A little bit less juice in the arena at Stanford, believe it or not, than there was in New York City for the Johnnies versus the number one team in the nation, UConn. But tip of the cap here in Southern California to our friend Mick Cronin. Love him, one of my favorite people in town, one of the best coaches in town. And just to acknowledge what he's doing, I'm sure he's a coach that Jim Harbaugh would absolutely love, the toughness that he instills into his kids. And it's impressive. Because I do think there's a correlation. I feel like I can actually speak a little bit at length to this. You know, he's got the 8th youngest team in the nation. And this is, a team, I just saw a UConn squad that won the national championship last year, and 3 of their most impactful players are all first-year transfers. One from ECU, Tristan Newton, one from Rutgers, Cam Spencer, and one Hassan Diarra from, where did he come from? I think, I can't remember. Anyway, Mick has got kids from all over the world, not the country, the world. 7 nations, Nigeria, Slovenia, Serbia, Turkey, France, Spain, 19-year-olds, 18-year-olds. And, after struggling at the start of the year, they are absolutely kicking tail right now. They've won 6 of 7. And, the correlation I see is, hey, it's not a sprint. It's a marathon.
Yeah.
And with the amount of free agents the Chargers have and how much different this roster is going to look, the infusion of young talent, maybe it starts a little bit slow, but when you have a coach like Jim Harbaugh who can develop talent, like Mick Cronin can develop talent, that's the most underrated asset of a coach, the ability to develop, to make kids better. And Mick's one of the best at it, and Jim Harbaugh is one of the best at it. You look at those kids at Michigan that he brought in and where they ended up after 3 years, after 4 years, and how many he's putting into the NFL. And I think that's, it's just something that kind of hit me last night when I was watching that game is they knocked off Stanford up at Maples to win their 6th and 7th. I'm like, man, these are kids playing against 22 and 23-year-olds, and these 19-year-olds in a 3-point game in the final 3 minutes on the road, just busting tail and winning and closing out and making huge baskets and coming up with big defensive stops. And that's the developmental process that's so important to finding in a good coach.
No doubt. We've talked so much about Jim's success, specifically with quarterbacks and Michigan and really every stop he's gone. But I'm sure we'll dig into this a little bit more, Money, as the offseason goes on, is just the player development side of it. And the guys who, maybe need that extra year or two and some time to untap that full potential. Guys like Quentin Johnston and Zion, former first-round picks, former draft picks that maybe have been a little late to develop. I feel like that those guys are going to show something this year and beyond with Jim at the controls. And, what a partner he has at Joe Hortiz, man. Like Jim knocked it out of the park last Thursday. I thought Joe did the same on Tuesday. And as I kind of survey the landscape of all the new coaches and just like the fit, right? The fit among general manager and head coach and how an organization is going to run, is it going to run through the GM? Is it going to run through the head coach? I don't think that the Chargers could have secured a better fit with Joe and Jim, given Joe's background in Baltimore, going way beyond John Harbaugh. Just the track record of success that front office has had, really the kind of the gold standard in the NFL. And then pairing him with the Jim Harbaugh, they know exactly who each other are. They know exactly the type of identity that they want to have as a football team. And I just thought Joe was fantastic. And guess what? Joe's going to join us in about 10 minutes or so. And we'll go way beyond the presser, but just your initial thoughts on that presser, Money.
He was impressive. I'm with you, Chris. I think there's reason to be as excited about the Joe Hortiz hire as there is about the Jim Harbaugh hire. You got to have the best players. We see coaches who can perhaps out-scheme or out-coach others. When you think about the Patriot teams and the draft the draft profile of their players and how often Bill Belichick got undrafted free agents to perform above their draft status for him on defense, or Tom Brady in the 6th round, Kyle Shanahan on offense, what he's able to do with Mr. Irrelevant at quarterback all the way to the Super Bowl. Yes, there are those instances, but for the most part, you got to have the horses. You've got to draft and develop well, spend your money wisely. That's something we really saw bite the Chargers, I think, quite a bit in terms of J.C. Jackson not being a great fit. The money that was spent in free agency, where Austin Johnson, was he serviceable? Did he do what he was signed to do? Yeah, but did he do it at an above average level? Did he do it at an accelerant? Probably not. So I think that's important, right? Is you've got to be able to find players, and Baltimore has done it time and time again. And Joe, one of the most impressive things about Joe is, and I appreciate it, is just the ability to connect with every single level of the front office.
Yeah, 100%.
There is not a single, there isn't a single person that's going to feel left out. This is someone who started at a personnel assistant, as an assistant to the personnel department. And from there, just worked his way up. Area, regional scout, college director, pro personnel director, player personnel director, just had to step a lot, did not get to skip a rung. And that goes a long way, because you recognize how important each rung on that ladder is to get to the top. So that is exciting about Joe. And just, look, I don't think we're saying anything that people don't know or haven't heard. Jim Harbaugh's, he's aggressive. He's confrontational. He is going to tell you what he thinks and how it is, because he believes that's the most effective way to get something done. Don't pussyfoot around it. I'm going to tell you what's going on and what's wrong and how we got to fit. And some people they're not comfortable in that environment. Maybe they just take offense to it, or they get combative. And I think in the case of Joe, he knows what it looks like. He knows how competitive the Harbaughs are and what they expect. And I've worked with people like that. I think probably many of us, people listening, you, Chris, we've worked with people like that, and it's fine. You just understand, okay, that's how they operate. They don't mean anything. There's no ill will. They're not belittling you. They're just aggressive, and they're a little more confrontational, and you're comfortable with that.
The end goal's the same too, right? It's just, it comes down to wanting to win, right? So it doesn't matter the personality or the way in which you do it, just as long as you do it. And Baltimore has had a formula of success in doing it, and Jim has obviously had the same. And it seems like those messages align very nicely when you talk about Joe and Jim together. One of the things that impressed me with Joe was just the him talking about like the family aspect to this, because that's a big deal. Like, Money, you and I both worked for the Lakers, and people have been there for 20, 25, 30 years. And I remember when I first I interviewed for the Lakers. It was like 2006. I was like in my mid-20s. I flew out from DC cross country, and I was expecting this like global brand headquarter corporation. And I come in, it's just me and the guy who hired me. And it's just like, man, this is just like a family. This is the total opposite of what you would expect from like a global brand. But I think that matters. Like, culture and family and guys who can set a nice path forward. And to your point about Joe, he's done every job in the book, so he knows what the scouts are going through. I think he even mentioned just like, hey, I empathize with those guys when they're on the road. I want to make sure that they know that we appreciate what they're doing. When you have that sort of culture where everybody's rowing in the same direction. And I thought you just brought up maybe the best point about Joe is he's done everything, and he's done it at the preeminent place. And I think that matters.
Sure. And football's interesting because it is different than a lot of other sports. There are very few, business-backed conglomerates that own football teams. For the most part, this is generational.
Yeah.
These things do not move. They get passed down from generation to generation. There are names like the Rooneys, the Hallases, which have become the McCaskies, the Maras. Now in Dallas, it's going to be the Joneses. There's very few, the situation in Washington is rare. And you saw what happened when someone who was a titan of business came in and tried to do it a little bit differently. Now, granted, Daniel Snyder is, this is just one of the worst owners in the history of professional sports in American history. But I think what you typically see is I think mom and pop lends to a negative connotation.
No,
so I don't
not
want to
at
say
all.
that, but it's, I think that the one thing about, and look, I said it when they were going to hire Harbaugh and everybody was pushing back on, they'll never spend that kind of money. I just said, I get it. I understand that this is a family that has owned this team for generations, right? From Alex Spanos to Dean Spanos to John and AG, who are now, all the way up at the top of the corporate structure underneath their dad. Dean, I get it. It's a long time. But since they've been here, I've tried to share with the people listening and watching, it's different. It is completely different the way this organization has operated since they have been in Los Angeles. And I don't, when you are hearing about some of the financial investments that they have made in this hiring cycle, that was the last part that I think, it's going to get out, what they're spending on the front office too. That's going to eventually make its way. And people are going to be like, damn, they are sparing no expense for coaches, for assistant coaches, for strength and conditioning coordinators, for now the brand new facility that we've talked about. And there's a reason why Jim Harbaugh was like, hey, Ed and I got to go shopping for some weight room equipment. Nothing is being spared. They had the Ferrari, that's the players, and that's spending money on player acquisitions, which everybody has to do because nobody's under the cap ever in the NFL. It's not like baseball. They're all spending right up to and past the cap. They had the Ferrari. Now they got the driver in Jim Harbaugh, and all this other stuff they're adding, the assistant coaches, the general manager, the facility, the weight room, they're getting the pit crew now. Now they have one of the best pit crews in all of the game, in all of the sport. Yeah. And there's a reason why I think, both Jim Harbaugh and Joe Hortiz were so effusive in praise to the Spanos, is because they recognize, okay, we're in LA. We've got facilities. We've got the quarterback, and we've got the destination where free agents want to be, and we're being given everything we need to compete, to not just compete but to win. And I think that's one of my takeaways from both of these pressers. These are two accomplished individuals that have done it at a high level, expect to win, would not leave their current situations to take a paycheck because of how competitive they are. I heard someone, I can't remember who it was talking about it. It's, Harbaugh just wanted to get back to Southern California. That's not how that guy's wired. You kidding me? That is not how he is wired. It is competition. It's championship. It's saying multiple championships because they're in Los Angeles is what's expected. And I think the same goes for Joe. Why would I leave a Baltimore organization that never moves on from guys? It's hard to get anything out of that building, let alone a person that's had success in the personnel department. There's a reason why he came and wanted this job and pursued it as aggressively as he did, because of what they envisioned the future could look like, the very immediate future could look like.
They got two Herberts now too. They got Justin and they got Ben, and they're both dogs. That just speaks to what they've done around Jim and Joe. And we'll get into some of the coaching hires, but Ben Herbert, I'm fascinated to learn more about this guy, his process, what he's done from Wisconsin to Michigan. Jesse Minter on board now as the DC. It sounds like Greg Roman going to be controlling the offense, and Jim's putting together a staff that he's worked with before that has had proven success, and I think just also with Justin Herbert in mind too. The Greg Roman thing I think is fascinating because if you go throughout his history, he's run heavy, man. But that's exactly what this Chargers team needs.
What he does.
He's never had a quarterback quite like Justin Herbert to throw the ball down the field. So first and 10, second and 10, you could take shots because you got a punishing running game. that's another layer to this offseason money that I'm sure we'll dive into once things start to take shape. We get into free agency in the draft and just scheme. But I think Chargers fans should be excited about the staff that Jim's putting together.
No doubt. And I think, we've talked about it. We talked about, Jesse Minter and what he's done. And that's the direct tie to Mike Macdonald. There's a reason why Seattle wanted Mike Macdonald. Now, look, he's young. It's a little dangerous I don't think they hired Mike Macdonald for his scheme by any chance. Everything we heard about him is what an incredible individual, leader of men that he is. But it's also the defense. It is the direction that this league is going in the post Vic Fangio era now. And that's the funny thing about this is you have these cycles. I think about Dom Capers in the zone blitz, and you think about Wade Phillips in the 3-4, and you think about Tony Dungy in the Tampa 2. Like, these things come, and then Pete Carroll, and cover 3 and the single high, and like these things rotate, and offenses figure it out, and then defenses have to adjust, and it's a back and forth, and it's happened throughout the course of football since the freaking wing tee. But like, the thing about this particular era of defense and what Jesse Minter and what Mike Macdonald are doing is people are trying to crack the code. And Brian Flores does quite a bit of it. And it's actually very similar to kind of what Bill Belichick was doing in New England, the amoeba defense, where you've got 7 guys on the line of scrimmage. You have no idea where the pressure's coming from. It's simulated pressures. Who's dropping out? Who's coming? But you saw, I think you saw against Baltimore how much teams struggled, and you saw Michael Penix Jr. have his worst game as a Husky against that Michigan defense just because they don't know. When the quarterback doesn't know what he's looking at, can't process.
Yeah.
And that's something that we saw, and that's why a lot of people are excited, about Jesse Minter coming on the defensive side of the ball and about what Jim Harbaugh is going to do on the offensive side of the ball.
The ability to adapt in the NFL and evolve is so paramount. And I was listening to some of Dan Quinn's press conference, and he admitted straight up, he said, I did a 360 on who I was as a head coach, what I needed to change. And he said, and frankly, that Legion of Boom cover 3 defense, that was hot for a while, and then it wasn't.
Yeah.
So I had to change, and he changed the defense in Dallas, and he had success doing it. So I think the ability to be self-aware of what's working, what's not working, and the ability to adapt, especially in critical situations as you move forward season after season. The thing that's hot one year ain't going to be hot the next. But it seems like this Mike Macdonald, Michigan, Baltimore defense, that's the next big thing. And the fact that you have Jesse Minter at the controls, who was, I think he was a secondaries coach for a couple of seasons in Baltimore too, Money. Right?
He was.
2021, something like that.
Yeah, he was on the Baltimore staff for a few years. He was the DC at Vandy and then became the DC at Michigan. And for the last 2 years, he's had the best defense in the nation. Yeah. And that's a big reason why Michigan ended up winning a national championship and went to the playoffs in back-to-back years. So, and beat Ohio State 3 years in a row. So it's a huge reason why. It's complementary football, right? And that is something that we did not have here the last 3 years. There was zero complementary football being played. If the offense played great and put up a ton of points, the defense gave up more. If the defense played great and held teams to a low number and the offense tried to run a 4-minute offense, they couldn't run the ball. And that's why Greg Roman's coming in, because the anemic rush attack of this team that prevented it from winning games, particularly a playoff game in Jacksonville, when they could not run the game to maintain possession and a 4-score lead. That's why Greg Roman is coming in. Fix this. And that's why Joe Hortiz is here. Fix it. Let's figure out how to get the right personnel, the right coaching, the right plays called, the right, and fix what has been a lack of complementary football. And I think the reason why Ryan Ficken is staying is because that's just been the one constant the last 2 years, right? Special teams has been exceptional since Tom Telesco found Cameron Dicker to settle the kicking position, and Ryan Ficken brought in J.K. Scott from his time in Minnesota when J.K. was with Green Bay, and he's the one that tipped him off to that, to the coverage units, to the return units, to the drafting, of Davis. Like, they've got that settled. So it's like, okay, we're good here. Now let's fix these other two, to complement this exceptional special teams in that third phase of the game.
You see Jay Harbaugh going to Seattle to run the special teams there with Mike
Yeah.
McDonald. I thought that was pretty cool as well. So let's take a quick break, and then we'll bring in the man of the week, Joe Hortiz. All right, guys, a big thank you to our partner, Microsoft Surface, the official sideline technology provider and laptop of the NFL and the Los Angeles Chargers, that provides players and coaches with the tools to succeed both on and off the field. Check out the powerful Surface Pro 9, combining the power of a laptop with the flexibility of a tablet at surface.com. And as promised, the brand new GM of the LA Chargers, Joe Hortiz, joins us. And Joe, you got us fired up with your presser. My first question to you, man, I got to see your family there, and to have everybody there for such a big moment for you, and undoubtedly a big moment for them going cross country. What has this week been like for you?
Oh yeah, it's been awesome. It's been a whirlwind for sure. Get the call on Monday, get it kind of finalized on Monday night, and then packing up in Baltimore. 26 years of packing in an office, you get a dumpster and you realize you're not taking everything with you. So spent a couple of days packing up, saying goodbye to people in Baltimore, and then getting on the plane Wednesday and hitting the ground running Thursday morning. So kind of got going, and my wife was great. She's like, we'll come out on Monday. I know you got to jump right in and work, and we'll come out Monday. And it was great to see them, and for them to experience that moment was awesome. Really amazing. We walked in, we got the rain coming. Yeah, the storms, the commute, you're not sure who's going to show up. And Josh was sitting there downplaying it, like, hey, I just don't know how many people are going to be there. We've had some people cancel. And then we walk in the room, and most of the Chargers organizations in there, there's good attendance from the media. And it's like, whoa, so my wife was just, probably overwhelmed a little bit. She's like, I know I wasn't smiling when I walked in because I was so in awe of everything that was there. But sent me a great text yesterday that she hadn't had a chance to process everything, and just the magnitude of it, and sitting on the plane flying home, realizing what just took place and processing it and how impactful it was to her. And, she said, I'm just so happy we're Chargers. And that just, warms my heart and gets me. I wanted to hug her, but she's on a plane flying back to Baltimore. So, but it was great. The boys had an awesome time. Got some jerseys, some pictures, some gear. They're in the players' locker room playing Xbox, FIFA, and so they're really excited, and special moment for my family for sure.
Love it.
I get, Joe, that there's 32 of these, so each one of them is special. There's so few of them, and anybody's fortunate enough to get one of them, especially as long as you've worked to get to the top of this mountain in personnel. But when you heard the Chargers job was open, what's the first thing? I'm not asking you to rank them in order. Hey, this is what attracted me, but what jumps out at you is why this is a great job for you.
Well, I think when it first opens up, they have a quarterback like that. You don't have to fix that problem. You are set there. So that's right away makes it attractive. Then you start doing your research, on the team, the ownership. I knew John from the road. So, and I've always had a great rapport and relationship with him out on the road, and it's just friendly. It's John and I aren't best friends. We're just acquaintances that respect one another. And so, but always had a great day with him when I was together with him. So those are the two things that popped in my head. And then obviously you start looking at what they're going to do, who they're targeting. And, once they hired Jim, it kind of completes the full circle, and I really meant it when I said it. Like every scout, we say great ownership, great QB, great head coach. And I have friends that are general managers, and they said, listen, don't take a job where you don't believe in ownership. It's not worth it. And now I'm like, well, it's not worth it to you because you're in the general manager role. Again, Matt, like you said, there's only 32 of them, but having gone through the process a couple times, you do see the difference of owners, and there's a lot of great owners out there. And I had the opportunity to interview with some great owners in the past. Didn't work out for me in terms of getting the jobs, but to sit there with the Spanos family and this organization when I came in and to feel it, I knew it in the Zoom. Like I told my wife, I said, this place is special. I could feel it. I could feel it in the Zoom, and couldn't wait to get an invite back out here to be in person. And it just carried over. So that, just kind of sealed the deal in the end. But certainly the quarterback was the first thing that jumps out to you.
Yeah. You know, Joe, we talk about all the jobs and the way things are structured throughout the NFL, and just the connection between you and Jim, the fact that John was in Baltimore, and, you know, just the fact that you guys want to play football the same way.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you don't get that connectivity between ownership, front office, head coach, and sometimes it's a delicate thing. Why was this so perfect for you?
Yeah, you know, I think, you know, Jim and John, they're certainly different, but they think alike in terms of football. You know, they want to build a big, fast, physical, tough team. That's what we've always been about in Baltimore. You know, prior to John just came in, just tied it up, you know, and like, it was like a tremendous leader and motivator, and really inspired us as scouts to go out there and get the best players we can get that really fit our scheme. I think Jim is the same way. I mean, look at him. He's nothing but a winner, you know, but they think the same way. So for me walking in here, the staff he's putting together, I'm aligned with them already. I've been raised in the same, you know, formula, you know, or the same, you know, organizational philosophy. So we're going to hit the ground running and try to find our types of players, you know.
You know, there's people talk about coaches and scheme and oh, this coach runs this particular type of scheme. This is how they want to play football. I think it often gets overlooked in front offices. Certain front offices draft a certain way. You know, they draft first rounders. Like, you don't rarely see them stray from the lines. You know, They're taking O linemen, they're taking D linemen in the first round. If they've got a quarterback, that's what they're doing. Is there something to that? Is, you know, just kind of, because I just think of the way that you built in Baltimore and, you know, drafting a center in the first round a couple of years ago, how important that position is. I guess that's kind of where my head's going, Joe. Just, we got to see how important Corey Linsley was to this team and what happened when he wasn't there. Nothing against Will Clapp at all. Did a great job filling in, but Corey's special. Like, is there something to that from a front office? Hey, this is sort of a philosophy that we believe in and where we've got to build a team first before we can get success anywhere else.
You know, I think there are different philosophies in terms of how to build a team. I think you can see that through the league, like you mentioned, Matt. You know, in Baltimore, we believed in being strong up front on both sides of the ball. You know, you control the line of scrimmage, you control the tempo of the game, you win the time of possession. Our best teams in Baltimore always had strong offensive lines and offensive line depth, and have been able to stop the run. The years we've struggled in Baltimore, whether it be due to injuries or maybe we just didn't have as good a talent up front, you notice hey, we're a little weak on the right side of the offensive line, or we're a little weak at center or left guard, or we rarely have been weak at left tackle. We played with J.O. for a long time, and now we've had Ronnie. But you see it, you see it affect you as an offense. So that's one thing I believe in. I know Jim's always put together great offensive lines at all the places he's been. But yeah, you control nothing gets done without a great offensive line. You know, if you're getting quarterback hit, you can't throw it. If you can't create lanes, you can't run it, you know, so put together a strong offensive line and build from there.
You know, Money and I, a couple of weeks ago, we're just talking about different pieces on this team that we know, are going to be here, from Rashawn Slater to Tuli Tuipulotu, Derwin James. Obviously, you've seen these guys and you've scouted these guys. When I say the name Rashawn Slater or Tuli or Derwin, I mean, I feel like these are game-changing guys. How do you assess this roster, starting with some of those cornerstone pieces, Joe?
Yeah, I think, as we get the staff together, they evaluate them from the coaching standpoint. Certainly, I've already evaluated this team. I actually advanced them last year, when Baltimore was getting ready to play them. And then obviously prepping for this opportunity, you watch some film on them, you get to see the players again. Tuli was a guy, obviously, is a rookie this year. Fun player to watch in college. Was a big fan of his in college, and he kind of did what you thought he'd do in the pros. Does he have a home? I don't know, but he plays anywhere and he plays hard and he's productive. So, but that's what you want in defensive players, especially along the front. You want some versatility, guy that can set an edge, move inside, rush inside. Those are the types of players you really like to have. And then with Rashawn, you got a guy to protect, Justin's blind side, and consistent producer, performer out there on the left side. And it's a lot of fun to walk in and see some pieces like that. Again, I talked about this team. A lot of GMs walk into a place that need a lot of help. This isn't one of those places. Derwin had a chance to meet him yesterday. spend some
That's
time
fun.
with them. Oh, it was great. It was great. Just the energy in the room, like me, him, and Jim were just in there. Tito was in there with us, and Jesse was in there. We were just chopping it up and just the excitement, and you felt it, like the presence with Jim and them, and they were feeding off each other. So it's going to be a lot of fun. The players are the ones that have been around. You see them buying in right away, and I just can't wait to watch it come together out there on the field.
I want to focus on a word you just said there, energy. And that is something you feel when you're in Derwin's presence. It's special. It is. How important is that? Because, I just kind of think about the teams in the Super Bowl right now, and I think about energy from Nick Bosa, energy from George Kittle. Right. We see Patrick Mahomes, man. I don't know if there's a more positive energy, bringing energy to a team guy than him when you hear those mic'd ups. Just, is that something that you can find before you draft, before you sign? And how important do you believe that particular, personality trait is to success for a team?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's huge. Like as scouts, we go into schools and we talk about that, and you hear their sources and the coaches and the people that work with the players tell you, man, he's an energy giver, or people feed off of him, and you don't have to be articulate and verbose and to be a motivator. You can just get out there and lead and just have the spirit and passion and love of the game, and players feed off of that and feel it. And then in reverse, an opposite, you can be we call it an energy vampire. Someone just steals it out of the room. And we don't want those. We want players that are passionate, and it bleeds through their pores, and you feel it.
Joe, the fact that you've done every job in the NFL and you were with one organization for such a long time, I know you spoke to this on Tuesday, but just the perspective you have from being a scout to just everybody in that organization, like you've done that job, or of that job very well. How is that going to serve you in this new role, knowing that you've been in other people's shoes and you can empathize with some of the challenges they may have, or some of the things that they need to do in their role?
Well, yeah. So I think that's exactly how it does help me. Like, as you just stated it, I can tell a scout, a personnel assistant, hey, this might be a better way. I know you're doing it this way. I've done this. This is how I've done it. This is how I would do it. Same with scouts. I understand the challenge of scouting. You leave your house August 1st, or in the end of July, you go to training camp for a couple of weeks, and then you get out on the road. You maybe come home for 2 days, and you're on the road for 21, and you're back home after 2 days, and then it becomes a 2-week cycle where you're away. You're away from your wife, your kids, if you have a family, and if you're single, you're out on the road grinding, and you just never get back home. And so it's a grind. You're working till midnight. So I can help them because I've been in their shoes, and directors of college scouting. I've worked alongside directors of pro, watched how they've done things. So having been able to go through all those roles and really, learning and being complete in that role before I took the next step. Didn't rush through anything. Always tried to absorb from Eric and Ozzie along the way, and Eric was a great mentor for me, as was Ozzie. And so, George Kokinis is a great friend of mine and mentor. We've kind of worked side by side for the past 6 years, but along the way, he's always been like just a big brother to me. And so you try to give that back. And I've always tried to do that with our scouts, and I'll continue to do it in my current role.
I'm going to focus on that one name, Ozzie, just because I don't know if there ever was or ever will be someone better to do it. Just the consistency, the rare misses. Maybe it's not home runs, but man, there's a lot of, and there were home runs, obviously, but there's just everything's a double. There's no strikeouts. Double
off the wall is good.
Yeah, exactly. We would always say, as someone that covered the draft for all those years at NFL Network, we would always say, as we're in the midst of the draft, how did that guy fall to Baltimore? How did they? And it's not because they fell to you. It's because the Ravens manipulate the board unlike any other team. It was just a constant, oh, wait, they're going back. No, now they're back up. Now they're back. And it wasn't just the first round. It was every round. So I'm sure, that's something that Ozzie, imparted on all you guys. And why doesn't everybody do it? How hard is it to do it, to try to make sure that you kind of get that balance of not just always moving back, but just kind of, manipulating the board where it seems to always work out for the Ravens.
Yeah, I think, it's like going back, I mean, you got to have a trade partner, right? But you got to be willing to. And you got to be prepared to go back. I think that's probably, and again, I've only been in one war room, Matt. So with Ozzy, and it was Phil, and now, with Eric for really 20 years. But the preparation, that goes into it to be ready on draft day. The answers are already made on draft day. The game plan, the strategies. I think that you're prepared for every scenario. You don't just sit there waiting to pick at 5, 10, 15, 32. It doesn't matter. And just say, I'm just going to wait to pick. You got to be ready to say, hey, where's the cutoff where we would go up and trade for a player? If these 8 players fall, we're sitting at 32 and these 8 players fall, where would we go? How high are we willing to go up to get them? And in the same token, if you're going to trade back, okay, which players will we not trade away from? These are locks to be Chargers if they're there. If they're not there, if these players are there, we'd trade away from them, and how far back do you want to go? You have to have a plan. And I think Ozzy and Eric have done a masterful job of that. And I got to sit there and watch it and learn, and I'll hopefully be able to be equally as good as them. But, they set the bar very, very high.
Hey, Chris, I'm going to just jump in again, just because I think, the draft has become it's so important to fans. It's crazy how popular it's become. I remember the first time we did the Combine, we did a live stream on NFL.com, and it ended up being the most watched event in NFL.com history. We had like 70 countries watching the Combine at the same time, and like 1.6 million people were tuned into that particular stream. It was me and Bucky and Maurice Jones-Drew and Ike, and we're all just sitting there at the end of the 40-yard dash line. I kept saying, what are these people watching? Why would they be interested in this? But they are, and I would love for you to explain something that you brought up in the presser, and that's comp picks and why they're so expensive, because I don't think people listening and watching quite understand exactly how that formula works, why it's so important, and why it became a big part of the lifeblood of the success of the Ravens.
Yeah. So like with the comp picks, it's really just managing your roster and knowing who is going to generate a comp pick. I think we did a great job with that valuation, expectations. And there's times like, we go into free agency. We want to keep players in LA here. We want to keep the Chargers when we can, but there's going to come a point with the salary cap, you're going to lose some players, and that. And it's managing the signings versus the losses in free agency. And they put them in buckets in terms of, what they signed for. So you just you got to know, okay, if we sign this player, he's going to cancel out him, in the tier, so definitely one of those things. Once you create that cycle of comp picks, once you start getting them, all of a sudden you get 3 comp picks on top of your 7 draft picks. That's 10 players that you potentially could ride through for 4 years. Well, some of them aren't going to be back. You're going to pay the great ones and the very good ones, and you may lose some very good ones because you just can't afford them all. So you hit on picks, you get more chances, and then it just replenishes itself every 4 years, so to speak. But it really becomes an every year replenishment.
Yeah, I think one of the things you said Tuesday, Joe, that fired up the fans was just every pick matters in the draft. And obviously the 100%. Chargers, I don't think when we started the season, we envisioned the Chargers picking number 5 overall in this draft. But just focusing on that picture for a second, because obviously there's some quarterbacks at the top and there's going to be some teams that want a quarterback. 5 just becomes that much more attractive in terms of getting a blue chip player or the possibilities that come with it. I think you spoke to it's very rare to have a top 5 pick, especially coming from the Ravens organization. How unique is this draft going to be for you, being that it's your first one and you start pretty early?
Yeah. We won't be sitting around waiting very long. That's for sure. Now we've done it one time in Baltimore. We had the 5th pick, and we've had it twice actually. I think it was my second draft, 2000 draft. We actually had the 5th pick, and then we got the 10th pick as well, or we had the 10th pick and got the 5th pick. But you definitely don't wait as long, but you want to get it right. You got to nail it if you use it, and then if not, if the phone rings and you have an opportunity to move back, you weigh the offers. But certainly a lot of excitement, knowing that we're going to have an opportunity to get a really special player here if we pick at 5, and if we don't, we'll get some more players. So again, that's the whole plan. Who are the guys we're taking? Are we willing to walk away from a player? We'll see how the quarterbacks come off the board. Certainly think there's 3 or 4 that could go really early in this draft. So, we'll see. We'll see how that all happens, but got plenty of time for that. We're not going to have to wait long once the draft kicks off, but we got a little bit of time. Before, we don't want to get too excited too early. You got
No doubt.
pace. Build yourself to that.
Right. Hey, as far as we're concerned, there's 5 quarterbacks in the draft, and all you teams that don't have one, you're going to want to come up and get it. You're going to want to pay.
It is. I tell you what, Matt, it's a good quarterback year. The teams that need
exactly.
quarterbacks, it's a good quarterback year. That's for sure.
Yeah. You talked about the staff and how that was priority 1, right? Make sure you kind of get the coaching staff settled. How much changes, because you oversee all of it, for the draft, and we got a long way to go. Obviously, the combine hasn't even shown up yet the time we're doing this, but the games are completed. You've got all your film. Like, how much work have you? I assume it's a considerable amount. Have you already done? And does it change because you're at a new place? Like the way you evaluate or value these players with these coaches, with the pieces you already have, does that change at all, or is the evaluation no matter where you are?
Yeah, the evaluation's the evaluation no matter where you are. Now, the staff you have and what they want to play for them, the types of linebackers, D linemen you want, types of corners you want, that can change. Offensive line, wide receivers, all that can change when you go to new staffs and bring in new staffs. I've experienced it in Baltimore. We've had different coaches and coordinators that have come in that may have wanted to shift the type of player we have, and you just adjust, and I remember one year we were a gap, power run game, gap scheme. And I think it was in February or March, we made a decision to go to a wide zone running scheme. And it's like, okay, that's, so we've already had our February meetings, with scouts. And it's like, all right, guys, that big guard that can roll off the ball and maul 3 technique, he might not be the guy that we want here in Baltimore anymore. So yeah, certainly you have to adjust. But you got to know what plays in each scheme. I think the coaches, conveying that to us, communicating it to us, helps us evaluate the players that fit what they want to do.
Joe, final one for me. You come from a brutal division where I think at one point, all 4 teams could have made the playoffs. Yeah. The AFC West has been tough, but it's always gone through Kansas City. And when you have a quarterback, you got a chance. And obviously the quarterback here, you always have a chance. How would you assess this AFC West, starting with Kansas City, and you got Sean Payton in the division, the Raiders making moves? It's a very interesting 4 teams here.
Yeah. Well, I think with any division, all right, any division, we've seen it. Now, certainly Kansas City, they're the standard right now, and they're consistent winners. And that's what every organization should be, aspiring to be, a team that consistently competes to win championships. And that's what we're going to do here. But they do it, excellent evaluation, excellent scouting. I know a lot of their scouts. They're all in sync with one another, and that's what we want to build here. When you watch divisions, when you watch teams, Sean Payton certainly has a great track record of success, and you see the improvement Oakland's made as well over the past couple of years in terms of adding players, and everyone's striving to get better. And a division can turn just like that. And you look across the league. Heck, I think the NFC East, no one won the division. There was no repeat winner for, I don't know how long it was, but it was
long
like 12
time.
years or 10 years.
Yeah.
And you get a lot of worst to first team. So that can happen in an instant. And, it can be done with players. It can be done with new schemes. It can be done with a new mentality, a bunch of different ways. So I know we're going to focus here with the Chargers on being the best we can be. All right. And we're going to try to get better every single day. But we want our players trying to get better every day. We want our scouts trying to get better every day. And we want to try to improve this roster every single day. And we're going to keep doing that. And hopefully one day we're at the top, and that's our goal. And we're going to work hard to get there as fast as we can. But we know we got great teams we're going up against twice a year that are in the way for sure.
Hey, almost certainties, right? In the NFL, every year, 4 new teams go in, 4 teams fall out of the playoffs, and every year a division sees a team go worst to first. Why not the Chargers? It's crazy. Every year, I'll finish with this, Joe. I have the great pleasure to do the games with Daniel Jeremiah, one of my absolute favorite people in the world. You had a chance to work with him, with Phil. You mentioned Phil Savage, kind of brought you guys in. I don't know if I'm saying, like, give me a story, if you can just share, what your experience was like with a very young, just cutting his teeth, the both of you, Daniel Jeremiah, way back in the day with the Ravens.
We need a good one, Joe. We need a good DJ story.
All right. Well, I don't have any one. I'll never say anything negative about DJ, so it's always going to be positives with DJ. Sure. One, I don't know if you guys know how good of an athlete he is, but he is. I never played. I'm not a hooper. All right. I can't shoot to save my life, but I go down there and watch him play hoops and all that. But all of us scouts during training camp, you find something to compete with, right? And we would play walk football. Okay. It went from walk football into running football, but we started by playing walk football. And so I'm having to cover Daniel, and Daniel's like speed walking, and I'm almost having to jog to keep up with him. But he's taller than me and longer than me. So even if I'm on his hip, he's just catching, mossing me, this, that. So then we say, I'm like, forget this walk stuff. Let's just run, and so again, I'm like the fastest guy on my team, and I have to cover Daniel. And I'm like, this is not working, man. Can we double cover him? Can I get some safety help over the top? Right. He's absolutely torching me. Give me some help. I can't do it, Right. So I kept trying and trying and trying. I just couldn't keep up with him. So, but just a great, great person, a great friend. Love talking players with them. Although I might have to tighten that up a little bit, but no, just we always have had a great time together, and he loves what he does and evaluating players. I love what I do at evaluating players and scouting, and but just a special person. I'm glad he's around. I was really fired up. He showed up at the press conference, meant a lot to me. He's given me some good advice through the interview process that maybe I'll tell you guys some other time. But it's been great to have him in my corner here, and to see him the other day was just awesome. Special moment.
Well, if you don't know how good of an athlete DJ is, just ask him. He'll tell you.
Joe,
we appreciate it, Joe.
Joe, this has been amazing, man. It's just the energy over the last week from Jim's presser to yours, and just to see how fired up the city is, to see what you guys do this offseason and beyond has been very, very cool and refreshing. And we're just so happy you're in Los Angeles, and appreciate your time, man.
Yeah, man, I appreciate it. The work is hard, but the game is fun, right? So
exactly,
have fun. Let's keep the energy up, and that's what we're going to do here. We're going to have fun, competing, and work hard.
So, Money, it's just like talking to an old buddy. He's just a great dude, and I'm so glad he's part of the Chargers.
No doubt. Look, I think that's a big part of it, and I think he talked about that in his presser, and it's communication. You can clearly see, first time we've ever talked to him on the pod, the communication skills, the comfortability, the familiarity that you feel like you have with him, even though you just met him. So that goes a long way in making, you asked it straight out the first question about his family, and he, pointed to, this is a family. That's just the way you spend so much time together when you work for a professional football team, that you start to feel like, well, I'm closer to these people to some degree than I am my family, because I see them more. I'm with them more. I'm on the road with them. I'm, at the office from 6 a.m. until 8 p.m. every single day. So that's an important part of it, to wanting as a scout to be on the road for 21 days to help this guy do his job as general manager. And, certainly it appears though he's going to set a very, a great tone for those guys to know they're appreciated, and to want to work harder, to deliver for this regime and for this team to be as great as we think they can be.
Well, hopefully we'll catch up with Joe in a few weeks at the Combine. We're going to have a great week in Indy. More than one episode of Chargers Weekly, I promise. We'll talk to a lot of folks there in a couple of weeks. And I'm sure next week, Money, we can really dig into the coaching staff. I'm sure at that point next Thursday, we'll have a list of all the coaches and responsibilities, and we can dive in a little bit more.
No doubt. Looking forward to it.
Cool. All right, guys, for Money, I'm Chris. This has been Chargers Weekly. We'll see you next week.